This is a story about light, a beautiful, mesmerizing, almost magical glow from a new miracle element. But it's also a story of darkness, of a secret kind of execution, one that was carried out not with a weapon, but with a tiny paintbrush deep inside the very bones of young women who were told day after day that their work was perfectly safe.
I want you to just imagine this for a second. It's the early 1920s. A young woman walks into her bathroom, turns off the lights, but when she looks in the mirror, she's not in the dark. Instead, she sees this horrifying reflection. Her hair, her clothes, even her skin, it's all glowing with this faint, chilling, greenish light. And this wasn't some dust she could just brush off, no. This light was coming from inside her.
Out on the streets of their New Jersey town, people started calling them the Ghost Girls. It was a joke, these walking phantoms that shimmered in the dark after their shifts. But what started out as this quirky novelty was actually the first sign of a terrible curse. A poison that was silently and just relentlessly dissolving them from the inside out.
So, to really understand how this could have possibly happened, we have to go back to the dawn of the 20th century, which was this time of incredible scientific excitement and the discovery of a substance that people thought would change the world.
It's hard to overstate just how wild people were for radium. After the Curies discovered it, it was hailed as a miracle. It was literally the most expensive substance on Earth. People put it in everything. I'm talking toothpaste, cosmetics, even drinking water, because they believed it could cure diseases and make them young again. So when World War I came along and created this huge demand for glow-in-the-dark watch dials for soldiers, companies like the US Radium Corporation saw an absolute goldmine. So think about it. If you were a young woman in Orange, New Jersey, a job at the Radium Dial factory was a dream come true. I mean, it paid 3 times more than the average factory job. And the work itself, it was delicate, it was artistic, it wasn't dirty or grueling. They got to sit in these sunlit rooms with their friends painting with this magical, glowing stuff. They were told they were the lucky ones.
Okay, so to paint the tiny little numbers on the watch faces, the brushes had to have an incredibly fine point. And the girls were taught this simple little trick to do it. Lip, dip, paint. They'd roll the tip of the brush between their lips to get that perfect point, swallowing a tiny dose of radium every single time. And they did this hundreds of times a day. They even played with it, painting their teeth and their nails so they'd glow at parties, all while their bosses reassured them it was completely, totally harmless.
But of course, it wasn't harmless. Not even close. What was actually happening inside their bodies wasn't some miracle cure. It was a slow, methodical, and completely inescapable execution. And the science behind it is, well, it's as fascinating as it is terrifying.
So here's the insidious part. Radium is chemically a lot like calcium. So when the girls swallowed the paint, their bodies were tricked. Their bodies mistook this poison for an essential mineral. It was like a Trojan horse. The body, thinking it was building strong bones, took the radium and deposited it directly into the skeleton, where it became a permanent, inseparable part of them.
And here's the kicker. The half-life of radium is 1,600 years. Once that stuff was in their bones, it was there forever. There was no cure, no way to get it out. For the rest of their lives, and for centuries to come, their very skeletons would be radioactive. Deep inside their bones, the radium atoms just started to decay. And as they did, they fired off these high-energy alpha particles. It was like a microscopic, non-stop explosion. This process literally riddled their skeletons with holes, shattering them from the inside. One of the first victims, a woman named Molly Maja, went to a dentist because she had a toothache. After pulling a few teeth, the dentist just gently poked her jaw, and the entire bone disintegrated right there in his hands. It just crumbled like ash. Now, as more and more of these women started getting sick with these horrific, totally unexplainable symptoms, you'd think the company would respond with concern. But they didn't. They responded with a cold, calculated, and unbelievably cruel campaign of lies and deception. The nerve of the cover-up is just staggering. While these girls were being told the paint was so safe it would put a rosy bloom on their cheeks, the company's own chemists were using lead shields and ivory-tipped tongs just to handle it. When the women went looking for medical help, the company hired its own doctors to examine them and declare them perfectly healthy. And then, in what might be the most despicable act of all, they started a rumor campaign claiming the women's jaws were rotting because they had syphilis. It was a deliberate lie to completely destroy their reputations and their credibility. And the thing is,
The company knew. They absolutely knew how dangerous it was. Decades after the factory was finally shut down and abandoned, investigators went in and measured the radiation levels. They were 1,666 times the accepted safe limit for a human being. The poison was literally baked into the walls of the building.
So, faced with this corporate wall of lies, a handful of these dying women decided they had to fight back. Their lawsuit wasn't just a battle for money or justice. It was a literal race against time, with their own death as the finish line.
The company's legal strategy was as brutal as it was simple: just delay. They requested postponement after postponement, filed endless motions, all because they knew their opponents were literally falling apart. The 5 women leading the lawsuit were so sick they couldn't even raise their arms to take the oath in court. It was only when a journalist named Walter Lippmann started publishing these scathing articles about the case that the public finally got outraged, and that's what forced the company's hand.
In the end, the company settled. Each of the women got $10,000, plus a small annual pension. For most of them, that money barely covered their medical bills and ultimately their funerals. So yes, it was a form of justice, but it came far, far too late.
The human cost was just devastating. In a different case, another woman named Catherine Donahue fought them through 8 grueling appeals. When she finally won, she weighed just 71 pounds, that's 32 kilograms, and she was too weak to even show up at the courthouse. She died shortly after her victory.
So the story of the Radium Girls is, without a doubt, a profound tragedy. But their suffering, it wasn't for nothing. Out of the darkness of their own ordeal, they managed to light a path forward for generations of workers who came after them.
You see, their legal fight set these incredible precedents that changed American labor law forever. They established the right for individual workers to actually sue their employers for getting sick on the job. Their case led directly to better industrial safety standards and eventually to the creation of OSHA, the federal agency that protects workers' health and safety to this day. They proved that even the most vulnerable voices, when they stand up together, can hold the most powerful corporations accountable.
Those glowing watches were a symbol of progress, of modernity. But the story of the Radium Girls forces us to ask a really difficult question. What is the real cost of that progress? Their fate serves as this permanent, glowing reminder that some lights just aren't worth the price, and that the true measure of any society is how it protects its most vulnerable people.